Good evening, my good tenor. So I just did a top 5 beginner frames video, and I of course have to do a top 5 weapons video. So here we are. Now, before we dive straight into it, I do need to go over something very important, otherwise this video simply won't make sense. This video is going to be focusing on players that are MR0 to MR7. However, in the super early mastery ranks, I'm talking mastery ranks 0 to 3, your enemies are super easy to kill for the planets that you are in. So really any weapon will actually work here. And it's also the time to get really easy master rank points and gain your master rank pretty quickly, so just grab any weapon and rank them up. For any super early game weapon that you get, the best way that you can mod it for damage is as follows. For the very beginning, go for your flat damage mods like Serration, Point Blank, Hornet Strike, and Pressure Point. Try and max that out as much as you can, although Serration and Hornet Strike is a lot of endos, so go for as high rank as you possibly can get. Then go for attack speed if you're going for melee, or fire rate if you're going for ranged. Crit chance, and then crit damage. These 4 mods on any early game weapon maxed out will see you through the early game. If you want a quick suggestion, go for the Boltor at MR2 or the Orthos at MR2 for melee. Mod these weapons or any other weapon with those mods and you will be good to go. And this applies to weapons all the way to MR7 as well. A quick thank you to all of my channel members. Your support means so much. Thank you. Now let's get into the actual tier list. The first weapon on the list will be the Guandao. The Guandao is an MR5 melee weapon that absolutely shreds enemies in the early game of Warframe. You can get the Guandao in the Tenno Lab in your client dojo for 15,000 credits. It is a slash machine, this weapon, and one of my favorite early game weapons that I used all the time when I started Warframe. When it comes to building this weapon, it's quite easy. Firstly, I do want to say I did put one former in this weapon and I put a Madurai polarity in. For the first build we go for Pressure Point, Fury, Organ Shatter, and True Steel. Super easy, these 4 mods will carry you nicely. Now let's talk about the stance. I haven't mentioned stances before. Stances are basically different ways of using your melee weapon. Each stance gives different combos. Just know that stances can completely make or break your melee weapon. These are very complex and probably require a separate video. For the Guandao, if you can, use Shimmering Blight or whatever stance you get while playing the game. For the second setup, we are going towards the mid to late star chart Guandao. We run the same mods, but we add Reach, Fever Strike, North Wind, this will make Viral, and then Quickening. This is only if you have this mod. This can be flexible to whatever you want. The base Guandao has such a low status chance that you're better off going flat crit chance and flat damage. Besides, you wouldn't have to worry because the Guandao is a literal meat grinder and shreds everything in the early to mid game star chart. I would highly recommend this weapon. It's super fun to play. When you progress, I would suggest getting the Prime variant. The Prime variant is a lot better and super strong. If you could take a moment to leave a like in this video, it would really help me out. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the next weapon, and that is the Soma. The Soma is an MR6 primary and it's quite a nice LMG. It has 100 bullets with quite a decent fire rate. You can buy the Soma's blueprint with credits from the market. The materials aren't so bad to build, it's quite cheap. When it comes to the build, it's pretty much the same like I mentioned earlier when it comes to building any weapon. The first config will have Serration for flat damage, this is only rank 6. Point Strike for critical chance, Vital Sense for crit damage, and Speed Trigger for fire rate. This will see you through to Neptune and beyond. For the next setup, we just added Split Chamber for multi-shot, Fast Hands because the reload is terrible on this weapon, and Hellfire for heat. If you want to complete this build, you'll have to put multiple former in, which I personally wouldn't recommend. I think this will be okay towards mid to late star chart, as this is only an MR6 weapon, and towards the later star chart you will be using better weapons. With that being said though, the Soma is a really simple weapon to use and you just can't go wrong with it as a beginner. And if you want to, instead of going for the base Soma, you can go and rank up one more and go for the Soma Prime version, which is better than the original and you get more polarities. If you do invest into the Soma Prime and put the former in that one, which is what I would recommend, then you can build something like this. Rhyme Rounds and Malignant Force are 60-60 mods, meaning 60% of the element and 60% status chance. I would highly suggest getting these as soon as you can. Although this is a little bit further into the star chart, these mods are quite hard to come by and take quite a bit of time to farm, but they are absolutely worth it. And that is the Soma. Moving on to the third weapon, which is going to be the Ignis. Now I know what veterans are thinking, but the base Ignis is actually not too bad of a weapon, even though the Ignis Wraith version, which you can get an MR9, without a doubt is a lot better. I would highly recommend getting the Ignis Wraith when you do reach MR9. It's a very good weapon. However, the base Ignis at MR5 isn't so bad for a super early game weapon. The Ignis blueprint can be obtained through the chem lab in your dojo. However, you will have to get 2 detonite injectors. It will cost you 15,000 credits per blueprint for the detonite injectors. These take 12 hours to craft per injector, which is quite tedious admittedly, but these are going to be all dojo weapons. The Ignis is a flamethrower that applies heat procs, which is honestly pretty good against most enemies in the star chart and doesn't do so bad against corpus enemies. When it comes to the build, there is a bit of a downside for this weapon. It doesn't have any polarity, so unfortunately you may need to invest into a catalyst for this weapon, but that's not the end of the world as it's only 20 platinum and I have explained how to make platinum early in Warframe. For your early build, you only need these 4 mods: Serration, Speed Trigger, Point Strike, and Vital Sense for crit damage. For the second setup, we run the same, but we add Rifle Aptitude for more status chance as you apply more heat procs, and then we go Ammo Drum. And we do this because the Ignis has another downside. The ammo sustain is unfortunately not the best on this weapon, so I would suggest running Carrier with the ammo case mod. This will make your life a lot easier. Or what you can do is drop Ammo Drum and go a Rifle Ammo Mutation. This will also make your life a lot easier. Looking past this downside, this weapon deals a considerable amount of damage and melts Grenier enemies, especially with the heat procs. You can add a Bane of Grenier if you have this mod. This will increase your damage quite a lot. A flamethrower absolutely melting enemies, who wouldn't want that? Exactly, so Ignis is a great option. When you hit MR9, go straight for the Ignis Wraith. Then we move on to the fourth weapon, and that's the Atomos. The Atomos is a baby Ignis, a pocket Ignis if you could call it that. A really fun little secondary. To be very honest with you, there aren't really any good secondaries in the early MRs, but I did want to include at least one secondary, and the Atomos isn't so bad. It does decent damage and chains between enemies. You definitely want to use an ammo mutation mod here, as you will struggle with ammo sustain with this weapon. It's great for clearing your easy enemies and deleting groups of them huddled together because the beam chains to other enemies. You get the Atomos through the market for 30,000 credits. However, you need Argon Crystals. Argon Crystals are quite the tedious resource to farm. You get them in the Void all the way over here in your star chart. You can access the Void via Phobos, Europa, Neptune, and Sedna, but Sedna is the last planet. You get Argon Crystals through these little Argon Crystal clusters in the Void, or by simply killing enemies. The best mission to run is Survival on Annie or Exterminate on Oxomoko. If you have unlocked Neptune, these missions are a great way to farm Argon Crystals. They are quite rare, and be warned, they only last a certain amount of time. So you will need to use up your Argon Crystals before they decay, otherwise you will just need to refarm them. After you have obtained 2 Argon Crystals, you can then craft the Atomos. Now for the builds, we have Sure Shot for status chance, Hornet Strike, but this is only rank 5 here, Pistol Gambit, and then Ammo Mutation. Bear in mind, if you're running Carrier with Ammo Case, you can remove the Ammo Mutation mods and then you can replace it with Crit Damage, which is Target Cracker. For the later game setup, we add Barrel Diffusion for multi-shot, then an ammo mutation mod. This is with a catalyst put into your weapon. Super fun little secondary, would highly recommend it, although you won't be using this for too long unless you invest a few former into it. It can be quite good if you invest quite a bit into it. If you do get it, I would recommend keeping this weapon because we get the Incarnate form in the late game, which makes this weapon a lot stronger. I haven't mentioned Incarnate weapons, but for now don't worry, just know that they make the weapons a lot stronger. Then we move on to the last 2 weapons. Well, technically the last one, but I joined these 2 weapons together because they are similar. And that is the Xoris and the Cerata. These are glaive melees. Glaives can be thrown and exploded in mid-air to do big damage and kill enemies in a radius. I am a glaive advocate in Warframe. I love this playstyle. It's super smooth and super satisfying. You can hold down your melee button and then press the heavy attack button when it is in mid-air and it will explode. This explosion does massive damage against enemies when modded correctly. You get the Xoris from completing the Deadlock Protocol quest. You will have to craft it during the quest and you get to keep it. Do not, under any circumstances, sell this weapon. It is a pain to get back. Do not make this mistake. Do not sell the weapon. Now, the Xoris is an MR4 weapon, which will carry you through the star chart like it's nothing. It's one of the best star chart weapons in Warframe. The Xoris is a glaive that has innate electricity and does primarily slash damage. The cool thing about the Xoris is this weapon has infinite combo scaling, which can be stacked up to do big amounts of damage. Now remember, with glaives, you only really want to heavy attack with these types of melees. Yes, you can normal hit enemies with the Xoris to stack up your combo, but I think you do enough damage in the star chart with just the heavy attack explosion. When it comes to the builds, I have already sunk 4 Former in mine on my main account, but I'm going to do a bit of theory crafting for you. This weapon is 100% worth putting a catalyst in and sinking multiple Former. It's a very good weapon. Glaive stances are not going to be easy to come by. Use whichever one if you get your hands on one. If not, get the mod sorted, then go for the stance. Use either Gleaming Talon or Astral Twilight. You want Pressure Point and a mod called Killing Blow. Killing Blow is a super important mod for glaive type weapons. It is the most important mod to have. Then Organ Shatter and True Steel. That is the first setup sorted. If you don't have enough mod capacity, just run Pressure Point and Killing Blow, then move on to the next mods. Then we move on to the next build. We run the same mods, except we add Gladiator Might, Corrupt Charge, and Volatile Quick Return, and then Fever Strike for Corrosive. I'll only show 2 builds here. This is all you need. You can just work towards this from the first build, mod by mod. Volatile Quick Return is obtained through Deimos on the Cambion Drift. Corrupt Charge is a karate mod, which I have explained how to farm in episode 4. That is the Xoris, a really good beginner weapon, and it has the highest explosion radius than all the other glaives, although the Xoris has a slow-ish wind up and the slowest flight speed of all glaives. Again, do not sell this weapon. Moving on to one of my favorite weapons in the game, and that is the Cerata. Yeah, this is my baby right here. I preach this weapon way too much. The Cerata is an MR7 dojo weapon that is so strong and will literally take you through straight to level cap. The Xoris can too, but I find the Cerata better in most cases personally. You get it from the biolab in your client dojo. This weapon acts the same as all glaive types. Hold down melee and press the alternate fire to detonate it in mid-air. The Cerata has innate toxin, which means it shreds Corpus enemies, because toxin as an element ignores shields and goes straight for health, meaning your Corpus enemies don't stand a chance against this weapon. However, this weapon, when built correctly, can tackle all faction types with ease. Let's get into the builds. Again, I have sunk 4 Former on my main account, so I will theory craft here. The first setup we go for, Pressure Point, Killing Blow, Organ Shatter, and Fever Strike to stack Toxin. Then of course the stance if you have one available. The second setup we go is the same, but we add True Steel, Gladiator Might, Volatile Quick Return, and Corrupt Charge. It's ironically the same as the Xoris build. However, you can swap out Organ Shatter for a Bane mod for more damage. That is the main beginner builds for the Cerata. Honestly, can't go wrong with this weapon, but I've said what I need to say. It's very strong and very fun, and it's smooth and fast. I love it so much. Before we wrap up, one quick honorable mention, and that is the Cronin. The base Cronin is an MR3 weapon, and honestly not bad at all. I don't think you should invest too much into it, as the Cronin Prime is definitely better to get when you get to the right MR, but it's not a bad early melee. It's a market weapon, so it costs credits to buy the blueprint. Again, it needs Argon Crystals, which I explained how to get them. For the builds, Pressure Point, Fury, Organ Shatter, True Steel. Use whichever stance you have available. If you really want to, you can put a catalyst, as this weapon will take you quite far into the start chart. You can, and then you can just add Gladiator Might and a Bane like Smite Grenier. And then if you can, get your hands on a mod called Weeping Wounds, which is really powerful. And that's the list done and dusted. I just want to reiterate that you don't have to follow these exact weapons. You can take all these builds and pretty much apply it to all the weapons that you get as you start progressing through your MRs, and it will do quite okay. Just know that these weapons are just pretty decent out of all the other ones. And that is my top 5 weapons as a beginner. There's many weapons, so it was very difficult to narrow it down between MRs 0 and 7, but these I found to be the better ones, with the easiest way of obtaining them. And that is the video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I appreciate you. I will see you guys in the next one.